What is up, guys? Welcome to the Songwriters Lounge podcast. We're finally doing a podcast. This is something that Andy and I have been speaking about for a while. My name's Thom. I'm originally from London and I now live in the USA. Songwriter, producer, musician, been playing music for a very, very long time. And I'm joined by my buddy, Andy.
Yeah, it's class. We've been talking about doing a podcast for a wee while and we're finally doing it. So we're here and I'm just looking forward to the ability to share some music with people, discussions, have a bit of banter in the process, and yeah, see what we come up with. So it should be a lot of fun.
Should be a lot of fun. And I don't know if you guys know this, especially like our listeners from the States, but Scotland and England have got this rivalry going on that has been for hundreds and hundreds of years because the English were such bastards. And now we're all right, I guess, but I'm sure...
All is forgiven now, Thom. All is forgiven.
Exactly. What you guys didn't see is before we hit record, Andy was giving me so much mouth.
So much abuse. Much abuse.
You know, we deserve it. We deserve it.
Well, we've done our fair share as well to you, I'm sure. You know, we gave you a hard time at times where we almost kind of took over I think we did have a Scottish king at once, so we not or something. Anyway, history is history and it's all in the past and we can have a good laugh about it now.
Exactly. And now we're brought together through music and
exactly, it's beautiful the way it's came together now, eh?
It's awesome, right? As I said earlier, guys, I'm originally from London. I've been playing in bands since I was 14, 15. Was lucky enough to tour in those bands, made some great friends all over Europe, had the best time, and then I moved to Australia. Me and a couple of friends there played some acoustic shows in Australia, just writing songs as we went. Had a lot of fun with it, and now I live in America, and I'm doing the same here. So literally taking my music all over the world, and I know Andy has a very similar background, but maybe not gone as far, eh, Andy?
Didn't quite go to Australia. I think the furthest I've been is Malawi, Africa. But I did actually do a bit of music when I was out there. I sang Caledonia, which is like a famous Scottish song.
Oh, I know Caledonia,
yeah. I don't know if you can see that one. It's one of my favourite songs. I've actually got a line of it tattooed on my arm. And this is just weirdly going off topic, but I did sing it to like an African tribe when I was in Malawi, and I don't think they understood a word I was saying.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I think they appreciated it. I mean, why not? But yeah, I've been doing music for a long time too, probably since I was like 14, 15, and I really kind of used it back then as a way to pour out all my feelings, primarily about all the girls that had broken my heart, to be honest, Thom. You know, I was a delicate child.
Yeah, so you're a delicate thistle.
Delicate thistle. I love that. So yeah, basically I picked up a guitar, self-taught myself all the chords just to get going, and basically it's led me through, like yourself, various bands in and around Scotland. Didn't quite do the touring thing. We weren't that good, let's be honest. But yeah, now basically I've kind of focused in on my absolute passion, which is songwriting. And music production was a tool that I really kind of started to experiment maybe a couple of years ago. And that's given me a vehicle to be able to really explore my songwriting in a much more versatile kind of fashion, because there's so many tools out there now that we can use. I mean, I can't play drums, but I can hear the way I want drums to sound in a track. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at the moment. And I've put a couple of songs out there. I've had some good streams so far, and I've met some cracking artists along the way as well, which I've been lucky enough to have feature on my tracks and stuff like that. So I'm sure we'll talk about all of that in due course.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, we'll get into that and you'll hear some of Andy's new material. It's we're very different songwriters in a way. So Andy's awesome at the kind of electronic, electro pop, very synth minded, but it's something that I lack. So I come from the other side of the coin Andy was saying he can't play drums, but he can think about it and put it in his session. I'm the opposite. I have a really hard time getting what I've got in my head into a session without playing. So that's a constant frustration of mine. And I know it's a songwriting podcast, but we will be sprinkling some production in there just because we both produce our own music and we've been around that for so long. So you'll hear some unfinished tracks of ours, and we'll just go from there, really.
Go with the flow, Thom.
Exactly. We're making this up as we go along, and we just wanted to do it. Why not? Especially in the time of life we are right now with the pandemic and everything. Totally. You kind of need that. It's just crazy. So with that being said, let's jump straight into talking about some songwriting, as we both love to do. And
let's do it.
We're going to talk about a topic this week that I'm sure I'm not the only one that struggles with all the time. So how do you write your top line, Andy?
So top line for me is something that, honestly, it's just a case for me. I sit down, usually I write my stuff. I did start on a guitar, like I said, when I was kind of 15, 16, and did a lot on acoustic. Really now with the kind of songs that I write, I usually start on a piano, and it can be anything from I will just be playing some chords and I'll start with like a hum. So I'll start just humming like this kind of vocal melody, which I'll have. And then I think from somewhere I just kind of develop that hum into a kind of lyrical mess. So it can even be something that doesn't make any sense. But you know, I start it off, and maybe after about 5 minutes, I've found like a line, and that's usually what I base then the whole kind of hook off of. So if that line is something, you know, about a particular theme, like I wrote a hook based on "You Hypnotize Me." So when I wrote that on the piano, I thought, well, what does that mean? What does "You Hypnotize Me" mean? And then I developed it from there to be this whole story about how, you know, this girl completely kind of manipulates this guy and his realization of I've been hypnotized in this relationship. I've not even been myself, that kind of thing. So you start off from really having, you know, I had 3 words there, and then I've developed it into this whole kind of theme and crazy kind of lyrical kind of story concept. And that's really then how I develop it kind of over my melodies lyrically. So it can happen for me in 5 minutes, where I've sat down at a piano sometimes and like literally just got one out within 5 to 10 minutes, or I can drag it over days. But as a general rule, if it takes me like too long and it's over like a week I've sat on it, I'll bin it, because I'm the kind of guy that if I'm in the moment, it will work. See, if I drag it on too long, I just lose the inspiration that got me there in the first place. And I find it really difficult as time goes on to get back there. So I don't know what you how you kind of get on, but
I mean, for me, an important thing to start with, is, especially for listeners out there that might be just getting into songwriting or having a hard time, I'm the kind of person, I have to be in the right mood. I have to be in the creative mood and definitely the creative mindset. Or like Andy said, it just won't work for me. I've tried forcing so many songs in my life and it just doesn't work. Straight up, full stop. I have to be in the right mindset. That being said, I've worked with and written with musicians that can just turn it on and off like that. And I'm always jealous whenever I work with someone like that. It blows my mind, and the talent is unbelievable. But similar to Andy, not piano for me, it's guitar. So I pick up a guitar and start just playing around with some things. I'm
jamming.
I rarely do chord progressions. I'll usually start with some kind of finger picking and then find the melody within that and then base that on whatever I'm feeling at the time. And like you said, it's usually just hums and crazy noises, and then I work that into lyrics. That being said, one of my very, very good friends from back home, Jack, a good writing partner of mine, the kind of person that can sit down and just write a whole song and a story in 5 minutes. And I miss working with people like that. And you know, Jack, if you're listening, I miss that, bud. Keep that talent going.
He wants you back, man.
I do. I miss Jack. But
I miss you, Jack.
I miss, never let go.
Don't let go, Jack. Don't let go.
Oh, Jack. If you could see my voice memos on my phone, it is just stacked full of different ideas, which I often forget to name. And it's something that drives me crazy. But again, when I'm in that moment and I want to capture something, I'll pick up my phone, do it, click save, and then continue working on it so I don't forget it.
Yeah.
Which is annoying because then I look through my voice memos and it's full of voice memo 33559. And I'm like, right, let's rename that then. It is frustrating, but a lot.
I mean,
I'm
exactly the same. See, I don't know if you like have it at the most random times, but it happens for me at the most unachievable voice note times. And what I mean by that is I'll be in the shower and I'm like, I cannot take this voice note right now. And I'm like, I'm going to have to literally stop the shower, dry my hand, and just hold it like just for a period of whatever that hook is, and then I'll put it back and then return to my shower. It's crazy. But I'm like you, if I don't name it, like, oh, this is like I had one the other day where I was on holiday up north in Scotland, and I was walking down this kind of big beautiful path, and I kind of just thought of like loads of Celtic kind of tunes, and I hummed one in there, and then I think I named it like Crazy Scottish Celtic vocal melody or something.
That's how you're saved in my phone.
I mean, that would be totally accurate, to be honest. But yeah, voice notes are the key for sure.
Exactly.
Definitely.
And as you said, it really is a first world problem. Like the fact that we're in the shower and that idea comes to you and like, oh, I better just dry my hand before I touch my phone. But it's the truth. It happens all the time. And I'll be out for walks and stuff and there'll be people around. And it happens, and I just kind of try and do it as quietly as I can.
Yes. Have you ever done that one where you're like walking down the street and you have to kind of like record your phone just underneath your jacket so that you don't look like a complete creep that's like singing to themselves gibberish as you walk down the street? You know what I mean?
100%. 100%.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I mean, that's a little bit how I write, and that's just on my own. If I'm writing with people, the process is very different, and that's what I like, bouncing off people like that. And I know what I can bring to the table, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with the more acoustic instrumentation and vocal melody and harmony. I would never sit down with you and say, I could make sounds with my mouth that I want a synth to make, but I could never be like, oh, let me just record this in quick. There we go. And we'll get to that in a minute as we discuss a couple of songs that we're working on, because there's one particular part I want to ask you about. But yeah, top line is one of those things. And if you're not familiar with the term top line, it's, hook, something that just gets the listener to really get dragged into it. And it's really important in the song. I mean, as we just discussed, the inspiration can come from anywhere, and it really can. And
totally.
A lot of the time in the shower. just how it goes.
Or while you're having a poo.
Scottish bastard.
I'm not going to admit to that. That is not happened in my life yet, so I want to keep it that way.
Yeah, I will admit that I've been at a family gathering and excused myself to go to the bathroom just so I can write a lyric idea that someone may have said in a conversation without looking rude and getting my phone out and being like, that'd be a fantastic lyric idea. Because that not only looks weird to people that don't write music, it's also rude. It's like, oh, hold on, let me get my phone out.
Yeah, I get in trouble a lot with the fiance, because we'll be sitting there and she'll be telling me something very important I've been told, but I am away on another planet. I am creating Mozart's next melody in my head, and she has to pull me out of that world and go, kind of, whoa, look at me here. I am talking to you right now, and I have to go, yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. And I've not listened to a single word she's just said. And I have to pull it off with extreme confidence.
Oh,
it exactly what I'm talking about.
It happens all the time, man. I mean, I'm married, and my wife said earlier on, I'm just going to go out to the balcony and work. Because obviously we're 5 hours behind Scotland, so we're still working when people at home are relaxing. So I'm like, yeah. And I'm writing a song, and I go out and just ask her if she wants a glass of water or anything. She then tells me about a puppy that's outside, zone out. And then I lock her on the balcony. And the funny thing is, just before we started recording this podcast, all I heard was like someone knocking on the glass. And I said to Andy, I was like, oh, hold on a sec, mate. I think someone's at the door. And then there's my wife standing there on our balcony like, let me in.
Raging.
So yeah, it happens.
You forgot about me. Oh, amazing. That is so good. I loved that. Absolutely loved that.
Right, so we're going to dive straight into our next section, guys. This is a track feedback kind of section that we'd really love to bring this idea to fruition. And in the future, it will look like, songwriters and listeners, if you want to submit tracks for us just to listen to and offer some feedback, maybe some production or songwriting tips, or just generally tell you how we feel about the track, all positive, no egos here. This will be that section. But since it's our first episode, we'll do a couple of tracks that we're working on. And I know Andy's got this new banging track called Without You that he's been working on. And I think he's releasing it soon. He can tell you about it. Here's Without You.
Looking back, I feel like I can be the one that holds my own head. Looking back, I feel like it was all for you. 'Cause without change, I can run much faster and be the one that's her own master. Took a while, but I finally see a different view without you. Looking back, I feel like I can be the one that holds
Hey.
my own head.
Yes.
So yes.
Talk about it, Andy. How did this song come into play? Also, before you talk, I love the whole concept of the track, and I love where it's going. So I can't wait to hear the final thing, man.
Cool. So so this one is called Without You, and it features a talented lassie from Wales actually called Bethan Horton. It's a very poppy, kind of hooky electropop song, and really I wrote this quite a while ago, and I had my fiance Mary dial in the vocal hook just in my home studio right here. I was just like, I've wrote this song for a female vocal, Mary, can you come in? She does a bit of singing as well with me. So she put it in, and I was kind of listening to it, and I put it in the back burner for a while. It was a completed kind of demo, but I didn't really kind of do much with it because I had other work going on then. And then really, Mary was kind of showing me this YouTuber that she'd been watching, and it was something I think she's been watching for a while, and she started putting up her own kind of songs where she was playing guitar and stuff like that. And she had a great voice, and I said, wow, she's got a talented voice. And she's like, yeah, this is a girl I've been watching for a while. Why don't I just pop her a message for you, and you can see if she'd be up for working with you? And I was like, yeah, go for it. Because in the back of my mind, I had this song, I was like, that's the kind of vocal I need for this song. It's very poppy, very kind of needing that commercial female vocal sound. And yeah, she got back to Mary and then put us in touch. And we just started Instagramming and stuff, and yeah, she's great. She liked the song, and she actually wrote the verses, the lyrics, because I left the verses deliberately open so that anyone that would come in on it had that wee stamp that they could put on it themselves. I feel like that's important now, that as I'm kind of learning more about how the featured vocalists want to kind of, they want to have a part of my song that belongs to them. So I've done that with this track, and it was hilarious. So she tracked in lockdown her vocals, I guess on her interface and her kind of relatively kind of affordable mic, but she was having quite a struggle setting it up. So I went on like a video chat on Instagram where I was coaching her through, like, no, you need to try do this, you need to try do that, because she was just like, I don't have a clue what I'm doing, but if you help me get the microphone to record my voice, I will sing this song for you. And I was determined to get her on it. So that was a very, very funny video chat. But yeah, I'm glad you like it, man. It's like quite a kind of head bopper for me. I think the most proudest part for me of the track is the vocal chops, which was just at the end of that section there you listen to. For me, it's just like a kind of really cool, like, flowy, bouncy, poppy, happy vibe that you get from that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
man.
know yet when this will next be out, but I'm gonna say it will probably be targeting late September time. So yeah, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, man, that's the first thing I was going to ask you about, that kind of vocal glitch comp that you put together. How
Yes,
did
yeah.
you do that? Because it's, again, like, I think some people do it differently. You know, some people would
Yeah.
wire it in, play it out on a MIDI keyboard or something. Is that what you did?
Yeah. No, so I have done that before. But what I find, like I've seen like Kygo and stuff like that put in his, I think that's how he did one of the vocal chops in that, is it Whitney Houston song that he did? Anyway, the way I did it was I actually had the vocal chops and I manually put them into time and into pitch, all kind of split up on my track in my DAW. So it was a very kind of labour intensive way of doing it.
Yeah, that's a long long
But
task.
for me, it gave me that much more control, and I think again, like I'm probably in the same way as you. Like I don't completely trust myself to be able to do it with a sampler MIDI keyboard yet, because I just, once it's like locked in as a sample on like say note D, it's kind of locked in there, and for me it takes a bit of time to then pitch shift and change it and kind of edit it. So even though it's a bit more labor intensive, I think still overall for me it's a quicker way of doing it.
Did you use like Logic's flex pitch or something?
Yep, so pitch shifter, flex pitch, and then for the timing, really literally I just would splice up the individual cuts and just manually drag them around, and seeing what kind of fitted the beat and what fitted the melody was really kind of driven by some of the vocal chops already had those tones, and then some were shifted around and manipulated in a certain way. But I think what I got in the end, like you have that kind of, oh, that's it. Like I think I dragged like the first couple in place and I was like, yes, I know where I'm going with this now. So yeah, it worked out quite well. I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, the vocal, Bethan's vocal is awesome on it.
Yeah.
Did she also record the harmony, or did you pitch that in after?
She did. No, she did the harmony as well. Like basically what we did at the start was we just did like a rough, she sent me like a rough vocal and said, look, is this what you're looking for? I got back to her and said, absolutely yes. And I was absolutely buzzing. Yeah, I was like, nailed it. But basically then I said, look, but what I usually work with is I work with three best takes of every part of your vocal. So I said, look, you're going to send me like your best take and then do it again twice. And what that means is it has the ability for me to have options. What I also do is usually I'll kind of take the best option and I'll put it in the middle, and then I'll just have like ever so subtly the other two. Even if I haven't used them, I will still use them as a kind of stereo effect in the hard pan left and right, just to give that kind of wideness in the vocal. Did that for me as well, but yeah.
You can definitely hear that as well in the glitches, the kind of, just the scale of the length. I really admire that, man. And just before we move on to the next track, tell me a little bit about the vocal chain.
Oh, vocal chain. So, I mean, it's usually very simple for me. Start off with an EQ absolutely every time, roll off the kind of bottom. For her vocal, because she's got quite a high kind of timbre and natural kind of tone in her voice, I think I took her up to as high as 200 hertz and rolled that off. Then really I'm doing de-essing. Because of the mics she used, I did find it quite tough when I was boosting some of that high-end air with the kind of more affordable mics that you have. I can't even remember what kind of microphone she said she had, but it really spiked through a lot of kind of really plosive frequencies on the sibilances at like 8 and 9 kilohertz. So I had to kind of do some surgical EQ after the de-essing there. And then really just some saturation with a free plugin. I think my usual go-to is temper, but I'm known to put Waves Vitamin on as well quite a lot, just to add that kind of extra body. And then reverb. So I think I use just a simple plate reverb. That's usually a go-to for me on vocals, and didn't overdo it. So I wanted her to sit quite far forward and have that big commercial in your face sound. So yeah.
Have you got compression on it or not?
Yep, absolutely. I'll basically, what I find I do is I do a couple of manual level adjustments if there's certain words that aren't coming out in her phrasing. I'll draw them out kind of deliberately by splicing and kind of bring that out. But overall, what I'll do is I'll do series compression. Just prevents one compressor working a wee bit too hard and allows me to have a kind of overall, like, still good dynamics, but not that any words are getting lost in there and that kind of thing. So, and also when you use a compressor, obviously, depending on the one you use, it adds, again, a bit of saturation. And I think for her vocal, from memory, I used the CLA 2A by Waves. And again, that's a very standard, good, reliable vocal compressor. Yeah, totally.
So awesome. That was Andy's track coming out shortly, I hope, called Without You feat. Bethan Horton, a lovely Welsh singer. And now we move on to another track that Andy's working on called Hypnotize Me feat. Ryan Soames.
Now I finally see you hypnotize
Yeah, as a drummer as well, I'm like, the da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-da.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes.
Proper, just like absolutely going for it. I mean, this is something I was hoping that you'd enjoy, because this really goes back to like my emo, pop punk, hardcore days, you know, when I was like 16, massive fringe, mosh pitting, and just being a general kind of teenager.
Yeah.
So,
dude, and this is the quickest song I think I've heard of yours as well. That BPM must be right up there in the like 160 range, maybe.
I think it is, man. I think it is. Yeah, it's definitely up there, and it's definitely a pacey one that I've done. And it all came about really from inspiration from the singer. So I was just doing my usual, looking at different artists on Instagram, and I came across this post by, I think it was like a kind of blog or something, and it was said emo meets electronic or something like that, and instantly I was like, oh, I like emo, and I really like today like electronic music. So I was like, what an interesting combination. So I basically checked out this guy's song, and then I messaged him, and I was like, man, that is class. I love that vibe. Like, it's like Owl City meets Secondhand Serenade. Now, many people might not know who Secondhand Serenade is, but he was like a really like solo kind of emo artist that would pour his heart out into these songs, but have this kind of massive held belt vocal on his tracks. And I just really liked the combination of those elements. So I basically, off the back of that, then went to my keys and started playing around with this kind of hook. And again, You Hypnotize Me kind of came through, and I was like, I need to make this big and have it as a kind of big, I want the drop section like it would be in a typical electronic track to be more about the kind of the absolute bashing drums, but with the kind of panned synths just going kind of pulsing through you. So yeah, I kind of started to create with those ideas whilst speaking with Ryan. And then he came on the track and again did like lockdown kind of vocals based in his own home. I've finished that recently, and that one is actually my next track that's coming out. So that will be out in a couple of weeks' time, I would say. So I think it's
nice.
August the 28th that I'm bringing it out. So very excited to see what people think of that. I'm sure I'll get some people that will be like, not quite for me. But I mean, it's just, again, something that I've tried to, an avenue that I've not been down before yet with my writing, that I wanted to kind of fuse together and see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's the beauty of music as well. You're always going to find people that aren't particularly keen on the work you do, but
Always.
it's just the nature of the beast. The thing that stands out to me in this track, and it's something that can be very poorly executed, but not in this case. I think he's done a great job. I like to call it double processed in my head. That phrase doesn't exist. So what I mean by that is, in the vocal, you have sections of the vocal that sounds pretty raw with maybe just a bit of reverb on it, some very slight processing. Then it goes out into that big chorus where the whole electro vibe comes with that kind of rock backbeat I love. And for me, that double processed term means it kind of goes from like super processed to then very raw. And I think it allows the listener to enjoy a very, very broad spectrum. And it's something that I really enjoy, and it's something that I can't do myself, never have been able to. I've tried. I either have to go like with the real process sound or the more kind of nothing sound. I think you've done a great job, man.
I like that. I like that. I think when I think back to kind of the processing I used on Ryan's vocal, I think the reason why, like certainly in the verses, I make it quite auto-tuned and quite electronic itself. I mean, he's got a nice tone, and I just added that kind of extra electronic kind of singe, if you like, via the kind of plugins, etc. But yeah, like I think I did that subconsciously because, again, I was using Owl City as a kind of channel, and he's quite auto-tuned in his kind of vocal nature, isn't he?
Yeah, you can hear it as well. No, I'm not. That's nothing against Ryan as a singer. He's a fantastic singer. I just love how you've taken the track, and that's the beauty of the music producer and you as the songwriter to add that kind of different element to it. And again, it's nothing on the vocal performance, because you had to have a good vocal performance to be able to achieve what you've achieved.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
just I think you've done a really nice job of giving that track that extra bit of spice, if you will. And as you said, you can really hear the Owl City kind of inspiration. And I love Owl City, so I love it, man. And again, with the synth, this is the one that I really wanted to talk about in regards to the synths. What made you decide? I guess you said that you write on a piano. Mm-hmm. What then happens in your mind to be like, do you hear it, or do you have to play around with the synths to then reach that point, or is it in your head?
It's a mixture. So I think like initially, I think with all the music I write, it starts in my head before I get it in the DAW. Now, it's never usually what is in my head that ends up in the DAW. There's always a bit of a process along that journey that either your opinion changes or something changes. I think with the synths on this one, what I had was it had that, I mean, again, Owl City vibes. In some of his tracks, the kind of synths are so fuzzy and bright, but so like rich and like powerful. And I was like, right, I want something like that, and I want it to be rhythmical. I want it to bounce off the rhythm of the drums. But I think like initially I had it as like quite plucky and whatnot. And then I just naturally, through playing around with the synths, just kind of ended up on this really fuzzy, wide panned, but still stabby like sound. And I think you just know, like, you play around with things, and you know, you filter things, and you'll be like, oh, I didn't actually expect that to happen. I mean, sometimes it will be as simple as fling on a preset and that's me. Other times it will be build it from the ground up. I'm usually an in-between, so I usually like to start with a preset and kind of mould it from there into what is in my head. And that's why what I mean when I say I go from somewhere in between from my head and the DAW, because you've got your preset, you've got your kind of mindset, and you kind of try and I never really fully get to where I want to be, but usually I kind of stop in my tracks, I say 5-10 minutes within, because I could go down a really long winding road on sound design if I'm not careful, and spend hours and never get a track finished, because you're always like, oh, I wonder if there's a better sound. I think at some point I just draw the line and go, sounds good. Let's kind of call it a day and take it from there, really.
Yeah, man. And it works. And I think that overall chorus, the synth adds to the warmness of the vocal in just a really nice way. And then you've got the hard-hitting drums behind it. I enjoy it, man. And
do you want to do a drum cover for me?
I would, mate. That's the kind of thing that I'd love to do.
Oh, I'd love that.
But yeah, man, I really enjoy that. And I'm sure that we'll have a few guests on here. I live in a town in the US. I live in Indianapolis. And there's some just fantastic electronic musicians that are probably listening to this right now being like, come on, man, I told you how a synth works. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Man. There's a couple. There's a guy, a local guy, one of my friends called Grant, who is just a fantastic producer, musician. The kind of guy that he'll write something on his phone and it's better than anything I could produce, working a whole week inside Studio One, electronic wise. And then another guy I know called Dan Giffen. He's in a local band called Philia, but he's Ableton certified trainer. And he's just
cool.
got a wonderful songwriting ability with that kind of electronic music vibe. So I'm sure we'll get those guys on the podcast
Yeah,
soon.
I really want to hear more from like Ableton kind of guys, because I'm a Logic only guy at the moment. I have tried Ableton, but it's just not worked for me in my workflow yet. But I'd love us to get someone on the show that can really take us through that process, because I feel like it's much more built for like live, don't you? It's like really kind of it's like I've seen people just run a full session live on Ableton and build it from the ground up, and you're like, that was all done live. What?
Well, I thought the same thing, and then Dan, the guy I just mentioned, invited me around to his studio and just walked me through Ableton, and within 10 minutes he had the makings of a really good song. And I was just one of those moments where you just think like, wow, like huge respect, amazingly talented guy. But I'm glad that the hard work's paying off. So I'm excited to get Dan on here. I know he'd appreciate your kind of writing style. So
Cool.
I'm excited to see how your minds collide.
Smashing. Looking forward to it, man.
But yeah, man.
Cool.
So this is we'll move on now to one of the songs that I'm writing. I'll explain a little bit more about the song after this. At the moment, it's got no vocals on it. I just finished the song last night, vocal-wise, so I'll be re-recording it. And this is when I record and write music, I use 2 different DAW sessions. And I use one session for writing that I can very much play around with and just get as messy as I want. And then I completely revisit it in a whole new session and really crisp up those takes. Big believer in getting the take right instead of chopping it all up and getting timing right. So I'll really spend that time getting the takes right. And this is just the idea of the song. It's very chilled, but I'll explain a little bit more. This song is called St. Kilda. Yeah, and you can hear there, man, like the different kind of drum samples I've been using just to try and get as I said, like the session is a complete mess, but it's full of all these different samples and just trying out different things. But I'm pretty happy with where I've got it now, and I'll be looking forward to recording that in the coming weeks.
Yeah, man. I love it. Even though you say it's a mess, it sounds pretty clean to me for a demo. So, for something that's still in the writing stage, that is quite a nice kind of sonic balance you've got there. I really quite like that. But the main takeaway I've just wrote down is I love the beat on the track. It gives me chilled afternoon nap vibes as well.
Yeah, me too.
which is kind of like not a bad thing at all. Like I love putting on my headphones and just like dozing off to something so chilled and like just really kind of, just easy going. And that's what definitely I got from this vibe. But I've also kind of noted that I really liked the growth in the rhythm. So you started off with this kind of quite quiet kick, and then you kind of grew the transition to have more of a punch. And that's when my head starts bopping and I'm like, just like, it's like I'm walking down like a meadow or something just with a smile on my face.
Cheers, man. I appreciate it.
No, it's class.
The song is about, so St. Kilda is a suburb of Melbourne, Australia, where my friends and I lived for almost a year. It's famous for St. Kilda Beach. There's a cool beach there. So the song very much emulates that kind of walking along the beach promenade. There's a lyric in the song, walking down the promenade with my good friends up to no good again. Because, we were young, we were messing around.
Couple of Sheilas.
Cheeky tequilas.
Tequilas.
But yeah, it really grew on that. And the thing I liked about it is I've wanted to write a song like this for a long time, but couldn't express it how I wanted. And then the actual guitar line is a rewrite of a guitar line we used in our kind of acoustic group, if you will, when we lived in Australia. And, we play local places, we play to our friends, usually get a few drinks bought for us, that kind of stuff. But we did a cover of a Zac Brown Band song, but rewrote it completely. And we used this guitar line for the rewrite of this Zac Brown Band song. And I always liked it. It sounds nothing like the original Zac Brown Band song. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll use it for a track,
Yeah.
And then I was like, what better way of doing it than kind of highlighting where we used it and where we were at that time? Because, we didn't have any money. We lived in a 1-bedroom house, 4 English lads in bunk beds in one room for 9 months. And I wouldn't
sounds like
change it. Yeah, it didn't smell too good, let me tell you that.
I bet. Oh,
I started just recording the guitar in a session, and I was like, okay, on its own, it gets quite boring. So then this never usually happens because I'm not a lead guitarist by any means, but there's a lead guitar line behind the intro that's all slide based. It just follows the kind of melody. And the first thing I did was plug my guitar in, find a preset of just a kind of clean electric guitar, threw some reverb and delay on it, and then just click play. And this thing came out, and I was like, actually, I quite like that. And, I'm sure you've been here before, but for some reason, if something sounds right the first time, I always think I could do better than that. So I kept trying to do better than that and wrote multiple different lead guitar lines. And I was like, it's not as nice sounding as that first one. And it's very subtle. If you go back and listen to it, it's the very beginning of the sample that we just played. I just finished this song last night, and I originally wrote it in E flat, which is half a step down for you guitar players. But last night I just wasn't feeling it, and I moved it into the key of D, which is not a key I've really typically worked in. But it really worked. So
cool.
I need to find a vocalist that can sing it how I want, because I'm not a vocalist, but I'll find that person, and I'll get them to record it how I want it. And yeah, I'm excited. I don't know when it'll be out. Hopefully in the next couple of months, if I can find a vocalist.
Maybe we could put it out for like an X Factor Songwriters Lounge, where
Yes.
people have to basically be like, you should pick me to be on your song, Thom.
I would love that if people were interested.
No, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool. No,
Cheers, man.
I do like it. There's definitely, I can hear like that you've spent time in the recording process, because what's clearly went into the box has been good quality, because that's what I mean when there's that initial clean sound. Sometimes I guess it's quite easy for us to all skip and just be like, we took the guitar when he was sat there in that corner of the room, and you know what, it's a bit boxy, but it's done now, I'll just EQ it out. But obviously you spent time there getting the right sound, the right kind of vibe. And, if you spend time in the recording stage, you hear it time and time again, it does pay off in the long run. I probably need to listen to that advice more often, if I'm honest. But you've clearly spent time here, man. So yeah,
I appreciate that, man. It's something that,
good.
We'll actually is one of the main things that I talk about in our next section. So it's a really nice segue actually into our next section. And just to finish off this episode, we'll talk about some production in a segment that we're going to call Production Moment. So the question this week is, what do you mostly use, broad or fine EQ strokes?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, mate, you start.
I'll go for it. Right, so what do I mostly use? I use more fine kind of EQ cuts than broad. I think why that is, for me, I tend to pinpoint the frequencies I don't like and try and treat them individually. At the moment, what I'm finding with my broad EQ strokes is it changes too much of the overall sound. And purposely within my sound design, I'll try, a bit like what we've just talked about with you've clearly spent time getting your sound going right in at your recording process. I am starting to be more mindful of that now. And what I'm finding is if I'm spending too much time on like a track to change the way it sounds overall away from its natural state, For me, that's going against kind of what I'm trying to do. And I've done so many mixes where I've made like the piano stop sounding like a piano, and then I listen to it and I'm like, that sounds like just wrong. It just doesn't sound right. So I think that's just where I've naturally progressed to recently, is you get the piano sound or you get the guitar sound or whatever that instrument may be, and listen to it like sonically to understand, well, why is there that much low end? Is that a fundamental part of the body that it needs? And if you cut that away in a big broad stroke, are you going to really lack the thing that made it that to begin with? That's what's kind of coming across to me. So yeah, for me, it's like the Pro Q3 plugin is my go-to, very, very popular amongst
beat it.
producers. No, you can't beat it, man. It's just, it's not like cheap, but it's not ridiculous for the quality of a plugin that you get. And I'll just high Q, solo, boost the frequencies, scan through, find what I don't like, and just chop away. But if I start to chop far too much, again, I'm taking away more of that fundamental sound. Little is more, I think, with that kind of thing.
Yeah, man, I'm exactly the same as that. FabFilter Pro Q3, that and the Waves F6 are the only
F6.
EQs that I use in terms of that kind of range. But for those of you that may not be producers or maybe starting out and just learning, you've 100% heard of EQ before. Equalization, if you're a guitarist and you've never, it's on every guitar amp, lows, mids, trebles, all that kind of stuff. And what it does is just, it's a tool for a producer to target specific problem frequencies on the audio spectrum. And what I mean by the audio spectrum is the bass is the low end, whereas the cymbals might be the extreme high end, and everything in between is the track. So, for example, a bass guitar is going to be that low end of the spectrum. So what you can do with an EQ is you can come and kind of roll off the high end to leave room for those melodic instruments and the melody sections, or you could even boost the high end a little bit just to add that kind of warmth to the bass. There's all kinds of things you can do with it, but EQ is a tool that you can go in and really mold your sound. But like Andy was saying, you can do way too much, and it's very, very easy to do way too much, especially if you're a perfectionist and you can't get rid of this certain frequency. That happens to me all the time with my guitar, because I don't have the most expensive guitar. So right around kind of the 5K mark, there's just this annoying buzzing, and I have to really cut it in there to get rid of it. Yeah, as we were talking about before, when I record, I really try and take the time to position the guitar and the mic correctly, to get the best take I can. Make sure I always try and record with a click, especially for the production afterwards. I just find it easier. A lot of people might not record with a click, but I do. It also makes me feel like I'm a better musician when I keep to the click on a guitar, because I'm not, I mean, I wouldn't state myself as a guitarist. I'm a drummer. Even more so, I should be able to stick to a click. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, you're supposed to have the rhythm down, man.
Yeah, but yeah, I'd say I don't go for the broad kind of. And again, what we mean by the EQ stroke, you guys, producers, you know what this is. But the cue of it is that the kind of the spike that you choose to take out. And if you have a really, really fine EQ cue stroke, it's going to take out less, but it makes a huge difference in the broader. It'd probably be easier if we actually showed you one time, in the kind of the spectrum EQ field. Fine EQ strokes for me at the moment. I've never really banded too much into broad strokes. Again, just use your ear as best you can and just trust your ear. I haven't got the best speakers in the world, or monitors, sorry. So I need to upgrade on my monitors. So right now, everything I mix is through headphones. So again, it just wraps around your head like nothing else, and
Yeah.
what can you do? But yeah, definitely fine EQ strokes for me for the time being. It might change in the future, but who knows?
Do you find sometimes that you might not, because you're saying that you mix mostly on your headphones? What I'll do is I'll switch between my Yamaha HS7s and my Audio-Technica headphones here, and I'll hear like more like subtle frequencies that I don't like in my headphones, but I'll hear like a broader picture of what's going on in the mix on my monitors, if that makes sense. So for me, there is a difference, and it's like an interesting tool as well to switch between them for me. But yeah, that's just what I've kind of came up with experience-wise, I guess, over time.
Yeah, man. I'm just recording stuff in my home little setup here, so not in a treated room or anything. One day I hope to have a completely treated room.
One day, I know.
But we'll see.
I guess like I'm kind of the same. Like there's frequencies in here that monitor-wise like definitely do kind of come through, but once you start to learn your room as well, you kind of already start to mentally compensate for that, I feel. But yeah, like ideally we'd all be in this absolutely incredible studio
Exactly.
with this massive desk that I probably couldn't use because it's too complicated for me, and I'd still just stick to my DAW. But yeah.
Me too, man. I'm an in the box kind of guy. But we'll get guests on this podcast, and they'll tell us all about the fun nature of a full mixing desk and outboard gear and all that kind of fun stuff. Because
totally
I love
keen
learning.
for that, definitely.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. This is our first run through of the Songwriters Lounge podcast. We want to hear all your thoughts, questions, so make sure you subscribe, like, follow all of our channels. Comment any questions below. We'd love to hear your tracks with some track feedback in next week's episode. So be sure to drop some thumbs up and some comments below. We'll reach out to us, DM us, whatever. I'm Thom.
And I'm Andy.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time, guys.